بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين لله تبارك وتعالى. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
We welcome y'all all to a special edition of the Black Imams Roundtable. I am Amin Muhammad, and we have a special guest today, our brother Akil Fahd, Hafidhullah, may Allah preserve him. And we're going to discuss the history of Black Muslims in America from his research and his perspective. Brother Akil is one of our beloved brothers who is really interested in the preservation of our history. As we had Dr. Rasul Miller, our brother Habib al-Rasul, Hafidhullah Ta'ala, on earlier Tuesday. We would have liked to have Brother Akil, but circumstances only gave him the weekend. So ain't nothing like a party on a weekend party, right? So we're going to do this thing, right? So this is a special edition. And joining us as normal in his late position, the Imam Genius. So we should call it the Imam Genius Lateness, right? And the boom bap must miss the beat, so he'll be coming soon. But inshallah, Imam Naeem, you want to have a few words before Brother Akil tell us about himself, inshallah, and we get this thing started. Sorry, my voice is shot. I was screaming all day at Jumu'ah, and so I lost my voice. So
May Allah have mercy on the believers of Masjid Muhammad of Atlantic City.
Ameen.
After Jumu'ah, they was like, what we do? It ain't about what you're doing. It's about what you're not doing. No, I'm serious. All right, go ahead.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wa afdalu salatu wa atamu taslim ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Wa radiyallahu ta'ala an sadati tabi'in wa ulama al-amalin wa a'immatul arba'atul mujtahidin wa muqallidihim ila yawmiddin. Amma ba'd. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. Alhamdulillah. I would like to remind all of our family who's online now, share the video right now, tag your people, let everyone know that we're about to get into it. It's about to go down. Alhamdulillah.
Why you saying it like that? Oh my goodness. Okay. All right.
Allahu Akbar. Before we actually get into it, I just want to, for context, I want to mention a verse from the Quran. And this verse is Surah Ar-Rum, chapter number 30, verse number 42, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Siru fil ard, fanduru kayfa kana akibatul ladina min qabl, which means travel in the earth and see what was the end or the outcome of those who came before you. And so, and Allah reiterates this many other times in the Quran. And if you pay attention to the word that's used, the command that is used, siru, and it means to walk, it means to move, but it is also the same, it shares the same root as the word sirah, which means like the biography. We know sirah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam as sirah. And so knowing our history, learning how things were before us is a extremely important endeavor that we should actively be involved in. So alhamdulillah, we are blessed once again in the same week to have another installment of history among the Black Muslims. Well, alhamdulillah, and we have our brother Akil Fahd, who inshallah will bless us with a lot of comprehensive, and I can almost guarantee you little known information that we should that we're going to benefit from, inshallah. So I advise all of you, if you have something to write with, I think you should get it as well. So before we get into it, alhamdulillah, my brother Akil, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam rahmatullahi barakatuh, Imam.
Alhamdulillah, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? You know, why should we listen to you? Like who are you?
Okay, so first, before I get started though, I want to ask you a question, right?
Sure.
So one of my elders mentioned it, so I have to. It's my duty. I gotta ask, right? So why is your group called the Black Imams Round Table? Why is it the Black Imams Round Table?
Well, that's easy because we black. That's the easy. Easy answer.
What's their eyes? What it look like? We black. You ever hear this? You ever listen to this group of people? Look, Imam Boom Bap, Imam Genius,
hey,
Imam Otis. Don't that tell y'all we black?
Send me what they ask, I have to ask. So
and we don't run away from being black.
No.
In our estimation and understanding of Islam, being black, recognizing your blackness does not undermine or go against or contradict any aspect or tenet of Islam.
Alhamdulillah.
Blackity, black.
and just to add to that,
yeah,
our main focus of coming together is to address, discuss, work together, and try to facilitate progress or betterment of the Black Muslim community, right? This is our focus, right? Because we black, charity starts at home, and that's actually a good question.
Because we're black, sometimes charity don't reach home.
Yeah. Sometimes charity don't reach home, right?
Right.
A lot of times we end up helping everybody else except us, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is not us. This is not our purview. We don't intend to do that. We look at it as an amana, as a trust that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us what little authority we have over our constituents, most of whom tend to be black. So, we're not like
it ain't gonna be no more blacks.
We're not like most of our politicians who garner the black vote, and then once they get voted into office, they champion every other cause except for the black vote that got them in the office. We trying to do the opposite of that. So in other words, we loyal to our people, even those of our people that don't recognize that we are a people. We still loyal to those people.
No doubt. No, I had to ask. I wanted to get you guys to basically respond in your own voices. Hey, I listen to you guys, so alhamdulillah, I rock with y'all on Facebook and off Facebook.
One thing about that, seriously, we really are concerned about the condition of Black Muslims in America. And when you tell your research history, you're going to realize and you'll discover as an intelligent person that we need to be concerned about Black Muslims.
No doubt.
Right? When you tell your story, and we're living in a legacy of Black leadership before us, and who at a time was concerned about Black people. And when we lost that concern from Black people, we became irrelevant in Islamic discourse. So, that is part of the reason why we're deliberate in saying the Black Imams.
Alhamdulillah.
Deliberate. No apology. We're Black, but no, we Black.
So y'all, so what you're saying is y'all not
exclamation mark.
So what you're saying is y'all not Muslims who just happen to be Black.
No, we Black. We Black.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah.
And that should get us in a lot of trouble.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah, right.
Some good trouble.
I told y'all,
I'm gonna finish getting my coffee that I can't, let alone I can't drink it black. I gotta put a little white in it.
Imam, you already know what I said about my earlier in our conversation, our phone conversation earlier. So alrighty. So alhamdulillah, I don't think, who I am is all that important. I think the point of it is what's the facts, right? Um, like Imam Tal would be saying, documentation beats conversation. You know what I'm saying? You either have the proof of something or you just talking. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, so alhamdulillah, I've been a researcher into Islam, into Muslims, particularly in America, but primarily in Detroit, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, and Philadelphia. You know what I'm saying? And of course, with the Dar Islam movement, alhamdulillah, and as part of my Jamaat, and I have Bayat too, is El Ummah, so that history of that Jamaat coming out of the Dar Islam movement, and for all intents and purposes, it's still the Dar. You know what I'm saying? Those brothers that formed that, like Imam Asim, who's a long time, Rahimahullah, who was a long time Imam. He came up through the ranks of the Dar Islam movement. Imam Mutawaf, may Allah preserve him.
Ameen, ameen.
Many of the other brothers, that still held true to those tenets of establishing community, bayah. This is something that we've been unwavering in, even with the onslaught of those who been influenced by foreign influences. Has said that you don't bayah is not needed, and all that type of stuff. So basically, I come out of that experience, but even prior to me having bayah to the Jamaat, I was a researcher. You know what I'm saying? I've worked as an independent researcher with the University of Michigan. I've been researching 25 years consistently on the history of African American Muslims, Black Muslims, Muslims of African descent, however you want to word it, right? I've been doing that. So alhamdulillah, but that's not important how long I've been doing it. It's, what is the facts? What is the documentation? What is the evidence? That's what guides me, So, we can get started.
Cool.
That's it for me as far as who I am. I do a lot of that.
I think a good place to start is I have a book, right?
Yeah.
And what we're doing is so important. And I know us on this panel recognize how important it is, what we're doing. But I hope our family who's watching and engaging and participating with us, I hope you recognize how important this conversation is. And I want to, throughout our conversation, I want to read a couple of passages out of a book. And I want to have you comment, correct, agree, or disagree with the passages that I read.
Okay.
Now, the name of this book is The Muslims of America, edited by Yvonne Yazbek Haddad. You familiar with this book?
Yep. Yep.
And so the part that I want to read in the beginning is, and it kind of like sort of like picks up kind of like where we left off at on Wednesday with Habib Rasul Miller. We talked a lot about Professor Izzuddin and Sheikh Dawood Faisal, Rahimahullah. May Allah be pleased with, may Allah have mercy on both of them. But I really want to zoom in on at least one community that kind of like was birthed or may have had its origins with Sheikh Dawood and the State Street Masjid. Right.
Okay. Can I do this?
Right.
Before we get to that part, right?
Uh-huh.
That's not till a period until you're talking about like 1962 to like 1967.
Right.
That time period.
Right.
I want to start prior to that.
Sure, go ahead.
Right? Because I think there's a lot of information that's out there, and because it's so often repeated that now that's become the normal narrative that everyone just ties into because it's just been repeated so much, right? And so let's talk about Orthodox Islam. And I know we like to use the word term Sunni a lot now in Sunnah wal Jamaat and so forth. I get it, but prior to those terminologies becoming prevalent, what the people, the earlier Muslims, referred to themselves as Orthodox Islam to differentiate themselves from, other heretical innovations and stuff that had crept into Islam. They call themselves Orthodox, right? And that's how they practice.
Gotcha.
Right? So that's why. Go ahead.
Your Honor, may I approach the bench?
Yes.
We're going to stop this right now. I know you've got to be politically correct. We had to start, because come on, man, this is the Black Imams Roundtable. A little bit, unorthodox, heretical. Come on, bro. Hit us up in a nice way, right? Speak it out.
Okay. All right.
So objection.
Okay. All right. But Imam, you already heard what I said earlier, right? Okay. So
in a nice way, we just facts. We ain't going into details. We gotta have the vagueness causes confusion.
Right. Okay.
Spit it out. Right.
Okay. So here's what we're gonna do. Right. There are a lot of groups that Black people joined in the earlier 20th century, meaning starting in the 1900s, the early 1900s. There are a number of groups that Black people joined that had Arabic terminology in the mix of what they were doing, yet these groups were not Muslims, right? And so I know how the normative goes. People say, oh, well, you just don't want to mention the Nation of Islam, right? This is the thing, right? So let's just go ahead and get this elephant out the room, right?
I see where you're going. Yeah,
right?
Go ahead.
So in the early 1900s, right, you had the Prince Mace Hall Masons, you had the Black Shriners, you had various other organizations, the Hamitic World League. You had these organizations, the UNIA, right? You had all of these organizations that were Black help organizations that were, for lack of a better term, unchurched. They were not necessarily tied to the church. They were independent organizations that were designed to help Black people better themselves, right? And for example, the Hamitic World League, right? This was an organization which Deuce Muhammad Ali was a part of. He was the only Muslim, right? But this organization was dedicated to the upliftment of Black people and giving them a historical perspective on their Blackness, that they were not Negroes, but they used the term Hamitic. And this is important, as I'm going to get to when I get to Professor Ezzeldine, right? They refer to themselves as Hamitic, right? And of course, these guys are still, their material, their literature, everything is still all out there, right? But as part of their group, there was another group, right, that was called the African Blood Brotherhood, right? This group was the group that was also responsible for helping the Blacks arm themselves in Tulsa during the riots, right? They were not pacifists. They were like, hey, we're going to help each other. We're going to contribute to building ourselves economically and all of this, but we're not going to stand for being attacked by white people, right? And all these groups espouse the same thing: black self-help, having black self-help, doing things for themselves collectively as a people, right? But at the same time, tying themselves to earlier civilizations that had not been enslaved, right? So you had a whole bunch of those people, groups. They wasn't Muslim, right? They
Right.
wasn't Muslim, but they helped create that environment that when people did accept Islam, they could build on that tradition. And that's a tradition amongst black people. It wasn't something that was just with one group. And this whole notion that we're going to erase all the history of all these other groups, right? And just say it was only one group. And if you don't mention them, even though it was not Islam, we're not going, you're not valid. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
No. We give everybody their due that try to help our people come out of that ignorance of, self-destructiveness that we were in slavery, right?
Right.
But you can't just write all of them off, but you can't call all of them Muslim. If you look at the materials from the Black Shriners and the Black Masons, if you look at their books, their greetings and everything to each other that they did secretly was all salams and based upon Islamic tropes. You know what I'm saying? And I posted, I've screenshot because my grandfather gave me one of the books. My grandfather was a Mason, you know what I'm saying? And a Black Shriner. When I accepted Islam and I told him, he said, "You got the truth now." This is what he told me.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? He was my grandfather by marriage. You see what I'm saying? And he was a Mason. He was one of the high Masons in Detroit.
You want to hear a funny story quickly, just to
Yeah.
Confirm what you're saying. My grandfather was a big Mason himself, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in my early days, as you know, my background was Ansar from a kid.
Right.
So I remember 11, 12 years old, I used to go to my grandmother's. And, as a kid, you wander around. And I was a nosy kid, so I'm doing my stuff. And my grandfather used to have some lessons that were in Arabic, Mason lessons.
Yeah.
And I used to see them like, whoa. So, yeah, they had this,
No doubt. And so the whole thing of it is that all of these groups, and particularly in Detroit was different space altogether. You know what I'm saying? Because it was a nexus point of the people who were running away. Like when people would run from the South, Detroit was one of the drop-off points before they went over to Canada. You know what I'm saying? So you had a different type of people that gathered. You know what I'm saying? And so that whole environment was conducive to Muslims. You know what I'm saying? And in the Black Bottom, and it's not this wasn't my research. I just happened to kind of run into it in part of doing my research on African American Muslims, but many of the immigrants, the Indian Muslims, they lived amongst the Black people because they couldn't move amongst the white people in the early 1900s and 1920s when they first came to Detroit. So many of them stayed in the Black Bottom. The Bengalis, Bangladesh didn't exist then, Pakistan didn't exist. It was all India. But these ethnic groups of people still existed. You know what I'm saying? That ethnic group existed, but the countries that they later formed did not exist at that time. You know what I'm saying? So it basically was all India, but that was the ethnicity of the people. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like Pakistan didn't come around to like 1947. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? So, but you had, Indo-Pak people that were living, primarily men, that were coming and living in Detroit in the 1920s and 19 teens, right? So the reason why I want to take it back there is because Deuce Muhammad Ali is an extremely pivotal person and he's often marginalized by both groups, right? He's marginalized by the Muslims because he didn't fit with the Nation of Islam thread, and then he's marginalized by the revolutionary blacks because he was Muslim, right? And he didn't fit all the way under the UNIA umbrella. But his ideology, right, and the things he taught was extremely pivotal. He was a pan-Arab, pan-Islamist, pan-Africanist. Let me repeat that again. He was a pan-Arabist, pan-Islamist, and pan-Africanist, right? He initially, his family. I know everyone pretty much kind of knows his history. His father was an Arab, and his mother was Sudanese, right? But he was reared up in Egypt. Europe, right? He was reared up in Europe, right? When he opened his magazine, he had like a clearinghouse that he opened as well. So his magazine, which was the African Times and Oriental Review, that's what it was. No, yeah, African Times and Oriental Review. When he opened that up, right, he had the Islamists who he was trying to bring together, and he had the Pan-Africanists who he was trying to bring together. At one point, this is like during World War I, the British government, the MI6, they actually raided him. They raided his offices because they thought he was in some seditionist thing with the Turks against Britain, when he was just trying to bring the Muslims together to strengthen. Now, he did work and he was raising funds, and this is based upon his magazine. If you read the articles of his magazine, he had a Turkish charitable organization, and that's important as well too. He had a Turkish charitable organization which he helped co-found to raise money for the orphans of the Turkish men who had fought in the war, right? So he was helping fund those people, and so he had a lot of people that in Turkey that loved him. This is important. All this, what I'm saying this for a reason. All this is important, right? So this is documented. You can go, his magazines are, alhamdulillah, they're preserved at the Atlanta college over there at Clark. They're preserved, all of his magazines. So alhamdulillah, thank you to Dr. Martin, one of the, another scholar who helped preserve all those magazines, so that all of them are preserved. All this is documented, right? So by him doing that, he was well known. The other thing was he was known to Africans as well. This is important because Marcus Garvey never went to Africa. He didn't have any connections to Africa. Say that again. He never visited Africa. All of the connections that he got through people that were actually from Africa, he got by being when he worked for Deuce Muhammad Ali in his offices. This is facts. It's just history, right? So a lot of his thoughts and stuff like that, Deuce would study teaching him. You know what I'm saying? Now, does this say that this is Marcus Garvey didn't have any originality to what he taught? No, that's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying, though, is that in terms of connection with Africa, a real connection, actually connecting to the people, Deuce Muhammad Ali actually facilitated that, right? So when Deuce, when Marcus Garvey came to America and he had this big buildup in Africa and America, when Deuce Muhammad Ali came to America, he was still functioning for the UNIA as the international connection. He was still in that capacity.
He was the plug.
He was the plug. He was still that. When the government, had the insiders infiltrate the UNIA and sabotage the Black Star Line, like this happened. They had black people. Let's be clear. It was black people working on the behest of the American government that helped to sabotage the Black Star Line. One of the other, so after Marcus Garvey got indicted and it was like clear they had him going to jail, Deuce Muhammad Ali was like the next person in line to take leadership of the UNIA, right? The government had a undercover informant. He was actually a federal agent working undercover. Like this wasn't a person who snitched or nothing. He was actually a federal employee who had infiltrated the UNIA, and he, gossiped and created a division between Deuce Muhammad Ali and Marcus Garvey's wife, so that they could create a division.
Now, wasn't this the first black intelligence officer? This same person?
Yes.
And
his last name was Jones. I forgot his first name, but his last name was Jones.
Wasn't this the FBI before it became known as the FBI?
Yes.
What was it called back then? I forget.
The GBI. I think it was like no. It was the maybe BBI, Bureau of Investigations, or something like that. But it wasn't federal yet.
Right.
Right.
So this was the black.
Still over it though.
So this person represents the first black agent to go in a black organization and infiltrate and create
paid government agent, right? We ain't gonna talk about all some of the slaves and house negroes that turned in our rebellions. We ain't talking about them, but in terms of a federal agent, he was the first. And how we know this is not conjecture. He wrote out reports, and the scholars have those reports that he wrote back saying, "Hey, we cannot allow this guy to get in power over the UNIA." Like, this is literally what he wrote, right? Mm-hmm. Because the whole thing has always been, like, we talk about COINTELPRO and we talk about, the rise of the Black Messiah. Like, that was the first time the government tried to influence and stop us from growing and doing something that's going to bring our people together and, to collective work to stop being oppressed, right? And they definitely didn't want it to be tied to Islam. And I'm going to go into that too, right? And this is really important because some of the things he said, like one of the things Deuce Muhammad Ali said, and he published this. This is like in 1913, he published this, that he said that if the American government did not stop the Ku Klux Klan and these races from attacking black people, that black men should join the military, learn to fight, right? And then come back to the South and defend themselves and develop their own land down there. Many people think that notion of a black belt area came from the socialists or the communists, right? And they say, well, they articulated this, and that's where the whole, give the 5 states, give us some land. And when the nation came out and said that in 1960, like, this was all something new, right? And this has been presented as such, but it wasn't. This is documented, and I posted this documentation before. So, but that doesn't fit with the narrative that the wider academia wants to portray. So they just ignore like that didn't exist, right? When it's documented, right? This is not something, that's conjecture. These are documented evidence of during that time period of what he was doing, right?
And I'm glad you wanted this. I'm glad you took it back and brought us down that path, because this is important.
Yeah, because so this is why I'm saying why Deuce Muhammad Ali being in Detroit was so pivotal, right? When he comes to Detroit in the 1924, 25, 26 period time frame, Detroit was still, bubbling, you know what I'm saying? Because you had different Muslim groups still coming through. You had the Ahmadiyya that were there. You had Sadi Majid, who was over the Red Crescent Society of Turkey, right? He was over that, which was another charitable organization that was connected primarily with Muslims, right? And so he was over that as well. So both Deuce Muhammad Ali and Sadi Majid were working with Turkish Muslims as well as indigenous Muslims. They didn't keep themselves locked down to just African Muslims. They were for the wider body of Muslims, but they still kind of connected to African Muslims, right?
And I just want to interject, Sati Majid, he set up shop in organizations in a few cities,
No,
Pittsburgh, New York,
yes,
Detroit, all over the
right.
place.
And so that's the other part of it, right? So whereas Sadi Majid, when he was setting up his were all over, right? His were all over Pittsburgh, Detroit, and Pittsburgh, Detroit, and New York, Buffalo in particular, right? Buffalo, New York. And so when you look at it, right, these two men, Sadi Majid and Deuce Muhammad Ali, they were bringing Islam normative, but they were also talking about self-help, right? Building your own stuff, taking your resources, pooling your own resources, and doing charitable work for yourself. They didn't go to the government. He helped create the American, I'm about to say American Red Cross, the Red Crescent Society, and he was the leader of it in Detroit. Sadi Majid was.
Question: what was the background of Sadi Majid?
Pardon me?
What was the background? What was
Sadi Majid was Sudanese, but he was of the persuasion of Sudanese who were identified as Arab in their lane. You know what I'm saying? But if you look at, and I have put pictures of them, posted on my site or whatever, they were clearly African, very dark complexion. In fact, Sadi Majid was much more darker than Deuce Muhammad Ali. And both of them, clearly African features. Like there's no ambiguity about it. But they identified as, Arab. You know what I'm saying? There, because Sadi Majid's, Deuce Muhammad Ali's father was just an Arab, But so, and this is also one of the things that I hear you talking about all the time, Imam. Is that okay? What type of Islam did they teach? From what I gathered from the evidence, there's no clear evidence that they taught any particular madhab or anything like that. But Sadi Majid was definitely a scholar in the Maliki fiqh, because that's what his family is. His family, he comes from a scholarly tradition in the Sudan, right? So that's what they were. Whereas with Deuce Muhammad Ali, there's no evidence, a trail of who he sat with, or who was his teachers, and so forth. I look at it like they were basically teaching a general normative Islam basic, right? Because they didn't have the books that were in English to give to the people. So I think there was maybe some improvisational type teachings that were going on. We don't know because there were no books involved, but we do know that both of them clearly distinguished themselves from the groups that were not Orthodox. We do know that, right? Because in 1929, and this was another pivotal year, right? 1929, again, Deuce Muhammad Ali, Saadi Majid, both were in Detroit operating. And like my brother Dr. Rasul said, when Lomax Bey or Professor Ezzeldine, while he was in Detroit, he originally came to Detroit in 1927, right? He was interacting with their groups, these people that were influenced by them in their communities, because there was one masjid that was set up where these immigrant Indian Muslims had asked Deuce Muhammad Ali to come in and lead them, right? So he was leading them, but he was also separately going to the African Americans, right? And I posted the article about this where they were interviewed, right? And the writer said, hey, when I interviewed Deuce Muhammad Ali, he had a number of places where he went in the city of Detroit, right? And were teaching the Negroes, right? So, alhamdulillah, that was the growth from that perspective, right? They were already in the city. So then people say, well, how do you know, without him having mentioned their names, whether or not he worked with them, right? In one of the articles that I found, in his correspondence with the Turkish government, Professor Ezzeldine said that he worked with a Turkish charitable organization for orphans. He said this himself. So there were only two Turkish charitable organizations in Detroit that actually worked with Muslims and the Turkish people. That was the organization that Deuce Muhammad Ali had formed and while he was in Europe, and the other one was the Red Crescent, which was headed by Saadi Majid. And there's documentation for this. It's not, there's no conjecture here, right? So he himself said who he worked with. Now, did he mention the names of Deuce Muhammad Ali or Saadi Majid? No. But this is obvious because there's no other groups that was working with them with that. Charitable organization. It's just none, right? So also in 1929, the beginning of 1929, when Lomax Bey, as he was then known, but Professor Ezzeldine, Rahimahullah, when he came out against Mr. Drew Ali, he said, hey, I'm going to lead you correctly. No, we're not going to be sending no more money back to you guys, meaning back to the Moorish Science Temple leadership, but we're going to, meaning him, we're going to lead you guys, lead you the correct way. This is what he said, right? Because the Moorish Science Temple in Detroit was doing very, very well, right? It was the largest temple. It was bringing in the most money. It had the most businesses that was associated with the organization. So they're doing very, very well. And now they were trying to move towards Islam. At that same time that Professor Ezzeldine or Lomax Bey was coming out against Mr. Drew Ali, Saadi Majid was leaving America, going to, and all this is in the beginning of 1929, right? He was going to Egypt to obtain a fatwa against all of these groups. Well, three groups specifically he named, right? He named the Moorish Science Temples, and he named the Qadiani or the Lahoris. I mean, some people call them Ahmadiyya, but man, come on. The Qadianis or the Lahoris, right? And the Moorish Science Temple. This was in the beginning of 1929. So he went to get a fatwa to say, hey, these guys are saying they're practicing Islam.
Who was
got
that
tired
third
of
one?
debating in Detroit, so
You
he
said
said, "Listen, we just gonna go back." They said they came to Egypt. They said they came to Morocco. We're gonna go. I'm gonna go back to where the scholars of these nations, this country, right, in Al Azhar, and come back with the fatwa saying, "No, this isn't Islam."
what were the three groups? You said More Science Temple, the Qadiani, and who was the third one?
It was, oh man, I can't think of the other group right now. It was three specifically, right?
Put that in a note to find that. That was very
Yeah,
important.
yeah, but it was a third group too.
And we have the fatwa.
Pardon me?
We have the fatwa.
Right, we have the fatwa. So all this, we this is not,
Where the fatwa?
yeah, it's not a conjecture, right? But what happens is the American government wouldn't let him come back. The American government wouldn't let him come back into the country. So
with the fatwa, and we ain't had no email back then
against these other groups. Now, again, this is prior to the Nation of Islam even existing. We're talking about the beginning of 1929. So there was a big
quick question. Do y'all have that actual fatwa?
Yeah.
Yes, I have it on my computer.
Yeah. Well, I don't have my computer with me right now, but yeah, I have it as well.
It's written in Arabic, right?
Arabic and English.
Arabic and English.
Yep.
Yeah, please. I want to see that fatwa.
I believe it was John Hunwick who translated it, right?
Rahimullah. More than, I mean, more than that, I need to see the actual Arabic fatwa.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm going to do some research in Arabic for it.
Alhamdulillah.
You see, because I have some stuff from that time from Azhar Fatawa in Arabic.
Okay.
Books of that. So if I can get that particular fatwa, I can find it, inshallah.
Alhamdulillah. And so now with this, and this goes to what we're experiencing today, right? You had these two men who were very charismatic, right? Deuce Muhammad Ali had some business ventures that he had going on, but somehow those business ventures got sabotaged. So in 1929, he also leaves America to not come back, right? So you have two prominent, charismatic men who are leading Black people in Islam in Detroit, basically cut off from the people. Also, Professor Ezzeldine, he leaves Detroit also, right? But he was intent on making hijrah to Turkey, right? He said, listen, we're just going to leave. And so he took a bunch of people with him, anywhere between 10 to a dozen people with him, children, men and women. And when the Turkish people thought this was all his family. But there's no evidence to say that any of these men and women were actually his biological children, even though he was saying they were considering that these were his children, right? So he went over to Turkey, and like I said, he told the Turkish government that, hey, I've been working with a Turkish orphanage, a charitable organization. You know what I'm saying? And so they were still willing to work with him, but this was after, the caliphate had been abolished, and the Turkish people were moving, the leadership was moving more towards secularism. And so they wasn't really trying to support, no hijrah from a bunch of Black people. But once he gets to Egypt, and Professor Ezzeldine gets to Egypt, now as he's starting to learn more, now he starts to talk about Hamitic Arab. And this was the identity of the Adina Allahi, was Hamitic Arab. Where is he getting this influence from? Why is he calling himself Hamitic Arab? When he was with the Moorish Science Temple, they used the terminology Asian, Asiatic, right? Or Moorish, right? He stopped using that terminology. Why is he using the Hamitic Arab? Why? Because one of his teachers, Deuce Muhammad Ali, himself called himself those things, right? He was part of the Hamitic World League. This was an ideology that they espoused and pushed, right? Basically to give Black people an identity. You know what I'm saying? We still struggling with that.
So just to go back again,
Mm-hmm.
you're saying Professor Izzuddin Rahimahullah got the whole verbiage of the Hamitic Arab from, or the Hamitic African American, or the, Hamitic from Duse Muhammad,
Yes. Yes.
even before going overseas in
Before
Detroit.
going overseas, it's just that once he went overseas, now he's learned the Arab language. And you got to remember the people who he was working with, they called the Jamia Suban, right? The Jamia Suban, or the what's it called? The YMMA, right? The Young Muslim Men's Association, right? They kind of patterned themselves after the YMCA, but they were really interested in being pan-Arab, meaning they were accepting all people who was identifying themselves as Arab to build a coalition. So with him working with them and then learning the language, it was just quite natural that he would then go and say, okay, we've learned Arabic, I've learned Arabic, our people, this is our identity. And when he came back, this is what he was teaching the people. Go back to your native tongue. This is our native language. The Prophet ﷺ said, he who speaks Arabic is an Arab. The Arabic is of the tongue, the language. So his thrust was a national thrust built around teaching the people Arabic and having them be Muslim. The problem was is that there was no definitive pedagogy, right? So what happens when you have that? You have a charismatic person. He comes back. He doesn't have the books. He's teaching, and people are just following what he's doing. But there's no documentation to transmit knowledge. So then things become anecdotal, right? And once it gets into that anecdotal range, that's when things start getting willy-nilly. You know what I'm saying?
All right. Hey, could you do me a favor, Fad? Translate
I
that,
know he's gonna say
because it was deep. And Issa, his wheels is spinning over there. He's
Okay.
like, I got you. That's a great khutbah, but I had a slight idea what you're talking about. You got to translate that.
Okay. What I'm saying is, when you have a teacher that everybody likes, he's got charm, he has charisma, where people like him and they understand he's bringing the truth. They want to follow him, right? But he knows so much more than they do, and he's trying to elevate them. But if he doesn't leave books, written text of how what he's saying should be taught, the people who can only grab a portion, they're only going to pass the portion along that they could have grasped, right? And everything else is going to float by. I know this is, the Sheikh said this, right? But you'd have missed all the other important stuff around that statement. That statement you said is true, but all the other important stuff around it, you've missed. So you've missed the context of what he was saying.
and then somebody else can come in and take that little snippet and put their own twist on it.
And put their own twist on it, but they said that snippet. And this is what my contention was of the formation of the Nation of Islam in Detroit. You had this vacuum of Islamic leadership, and then you have a light-complected man come in, being charismatic, and our people, man, we're still trying to overcome this thing. You know what I'm saying? This inferiority complex. And I've seen it in modern day times where a dude who don't even really know much, right? but he speaks with an accent. You know what I'm saying? Clean him up a little bit, and then he can become the leader of black people. You know what I'm saying?
Put just a note here, right? What you just said is my whole mission.
Mm-hmm.
What you just described is my whole work. All what we're doing, that's my whole work, right?
Mm-hmm.
The actual, not only getting pieces of what our tradition, our history, our connection, as Sister Samira, the wife of Imam Genius, said, that's why Isnad is so important.
No doubt.
In every aspect,
Every.
both men, both books, both information, all of that is important. So we get an entire picture. That's good. I just wanted to put that point there because that's something that should be, highlighted in the book,
Yeah. So in the midst of that, like I said, in the midst of that vacuum, this is when, we start the Sunni or Orthodox community start to really get splintered, particularly the ones that existed. And let me be clear, the ones that existed in Detroit and Philadelphia, Detroit, Pittsburgh, and Buffalo. We know these existed, right? Because they were there teaching, and during the times that they were teaching there, they were interacting with the news reporters. So it's documented, right?
And filing lawsuits and winning.
Oh, that I'm about to get to that, right?
Okay.
So what happened? Everything still got loose. The Qadianis, they still were doing their thing, but they got booted out from most of the black masajids. And then it was just the Lahoris, because they were like, the Qadianis they're too much of this, this stair-stepping thing where they were on the top and the black people were on the bottom and could never get up to the leadership, right? The Lahoris were a little bit looser in how they were interacting with that. So a number of the black people went with them,
Do you have a distinction between the Qadiani and the Lahoris? Who are the Lahoris?
I was going to mention that because the Qadiani movement, it broke up into two branches.
Right.
And one is based in Lahore, right?
Right.
And some people mistakenly think that one of them is still considered Muslim and the other one ain't, when both of them are not Muslim. But that's because somebody famous said it years ago, and that's why people think that. But good.
Right.
So the Lahoris may be Qadiani as well.
They are Qadiani.
Right. But I make a distinction because in the writings, right, the black people who were following them, they made the distinction. So that's why I'm making the distinction, right?
Oh, but I'm just talking about in terms of identification, more precise, so that when remember we were talking about we're going to get the history out,
right?
Then we're going to analyze the history,
right?
Which is a whole nother discussion. So for that analyzing the history is important that when we put these flags on these names, because we're going to actually go back and bring it to our context, what that stuff meant.
Well, I'm going to defer to Imam Naeem, and I'm gonna allow him to make that distinction between the Qadiani and the Lahoris. And I'm gonna have me a little drink. Now,
Your Honor, may I approach the
somebody
bench?
gonna make a meme out of this, like, man, me drinking beer. Stuff full of.
Right. Your Honor, may I approach the bench?
May approach.
Yeah, he's avoiding the questions here. I want to strike the answer. We want facts.
Imam?
One group, they make the claim that they don't believe that Mirza Ghulam Ahmed is a prophet, but they still follow him and believe in him, which is a contradiction, right? So, and basically they don't outright believe in him as a prophet from the front door. They just do it from the back door. They still follow him and believe in him and all that kind of stuff. But if he himself claimed to be a prophet and is documented, then he himself left Islam. So how can you follow the teaching of someone that left Islam? It's like a principle that I remember we learned a couple of years ago in Akida of Imam Tahawi class in Atlantic City. Who was teaching that? Oh yeah, Imam Amin was teaching it, right? He's, I forgot how to say it in
Hearsay,
Arabic.
Your Honor, hearsay.
But the one who agrees with kufr, how do you say it in Arabic?
Ar-rida bil kufr kufr.
Yes. Being pleased with or agreeing with kufr is kufr, right?
Mm.
So, but I remember years ago, maybe a decade or two ago, somebody very famous said that one of those branches, I think he said the Lahori branch, they're considered Muslim, but that's not the case. And even I have a book, maybe I'll find it in a second, but both branches have already been declared in Pakistan as disbelievers. And the scholars got together, they presented their case to the government, and the government ruled in the Muslims' favor. So they considered a Qadiani a whole different religion, not a Muslim religion, Islamic religion. So they have their own burial grounds and everything.
Mm.
And here's Sidi Ahmed Mubarak put 2 points. He said, the Lahoris, they said that he was a mujaddid, and also said he's the Mahdi. So I think here's one that's important right now that we should keep in mind, and we ain't going to do it now.
Right.
But I hope you got a little of this heat. You realize how I get warm up in this kitchen. You used to it, and then you come back and we turn up the flame. Right.
Well, no, that's why I said I'm going to defer to Imam Naeem to let him do that.
This is a good book to get. They made a book out of the scholarly work that the scholars in Pakistan submitted to the government, and how the government ruled that they were considered non-Muslim. All the intellectual work and the scholarship and the proofs and all of that stuff, they made it into a book form, and they made it into a book. And so
now here's what I'm telling you, which is unique about us.
Mm-hmm.
I have books written on Al-Qadiyaniyah in Arabic from India, like that. So you got books that were written by Sheikh Ahmed Rida Khan. He wrote about Al-Qadiyaniyah.
Mm-hmm.
Then you got some modern books that were written by Pakistani scholars that go in detail about the different branches of the Qadiyaniyah, right? So now, where before a lot of information, because we didn't have access to original sources, we couldn't dig. But now when we're all together,
Right.
so we can start, bring sources from all over the world to start to put this puzzle back together for our benefit.
Right.
So like these points are important because we can really, really get in. And I remember in Damascus, Sheikh Muhammad Ramadan, Sayyid Ramadan al-Bouti, he said to me, he said that the West, the British, they tried to destroy Islam from within with 3 groups. And among those, he mentioned Al-Wahhabiyya in the Arabian Peninsula, and he mentioned Al-Baha'iyya. I forget where he said they were at.
Persia.
Or
Iran. Yeah.
Iran.
Yep.
And then he mentioned Al-Qadiyaniyya in Hind, right? In India, Pakistan areas, because there was India then, right? He mentioned those 3.
Right.
And he told me that personally, right? He said that, and these were all plots of the British.
No doubt.
Against Islam. Now, as we study our history, we see where this stuff is deep.
But like one of, if you look at it though, think about it. When they were trying to come into Africa, both North and West Africa, right? It was the Sufis who were fighting them, both in the north and west, right? But what they did with the Qadiani and Lahores is said that jihad was no more for the normal era. So it was like, you know what I'm saying? If you put that into your doctrine, you know what I'm saying? It's self-defeating. But anyway, so
go ahead. We putting points because these going to be discussions we're going to have to go in detail.
No doubt.
It will involve more research on all of our parts.
No doubt. So going back to, like I said, the point of 1929, when both Saadi Majid and Deuce Muhammad Ali were out of the country, one couldn't come back, and one just decided he wasn't coming back no more because of, you know, the opposition that he was getting, not from like within the black community, but just the pressure from the government. And then also I want to say this too. This is another important thing about what Deuce Muhammad Ali did while he was in Detroit. So in Detroit, there was an issue where on the lower, so once the Black Bottom is really what is downtown, right? Downtown Detroit right now, near 75 for everybody, where 75 meets Jefferson and runs along. That was Hastings and the Black Bottom era, for the people who don't know, right? But most black people know, you know, from the east side, we know what the Black Bottoms was, right? When a black doctor, he moved out of the Black Bottoms and moved to the Lower East Side. This was in 1925. Deuce Muhammad Ali was still in Detroit. His name was Dr. Sweet. He was a dentist and he had made some money and he moved. And a white mob formed. They was about to, you know, try to kill him and lynch him or whatever. And so he was in the house, and as this mob formed to try to, you know, attack him, he shot and killed one of the men who was trying to come into his home, right? While he was there, Deuce Muhammad Ali was raising monies in conjunction with the NAACP to fight his legal battle. You know what I'm saying? So he was an activist all the way around. Why isn't he talked about in that manner? You know what I'm saying? If he was of another persuasion, or if he was somebody else, he would be the poster child for activism in America.
They always try to erase our history.
Yes.
And to ignore our narrative.
Right.
And then rewrite their own narrative in place of the real one.
Right. And then we take it though, right?
Yeah.
We take it and we run with it because either one, we haven't done our own research, right? Or two, we want to be part of the get along gang and go along with whatever Academia America is pushing.
I want to put a plug in there.
Oh, you keep putting these lines. You gonna kill me.
Right. Just repeat the line so we can put that on record. It's gonna be part of my appeal later. We can't have double standards here, right? I like this true fact finding point. So just for the record, could you please repeat that last line?
Which one?
That one that said, you know, they always reinterpret history and we take it. You know that line?
We take it, right, without doing our own research, right?
Right. So one more time, just for the record.
Be part of the get along gang.
All right, there you go. I knew that whole line would come out. All of it is essential. It will appear in the appeal.
I already told y'all. I already told you. But yeah, so that was the thing. Like this man was just so instrumental. You know what I'm saying? And so pivotal. But he had the American government, right? Informants working against him, right? He had them sabotaging his businesses. And that's another way that they get you, right? If you can't make no money to help the people, then you can't expand. You can't do anything. And they understand this very, very clearly, right? I'll hit you at your resource level, you know? But on the flip end of that, this man was also raising money for orphans who of Muslim soldiers who fought in the war. Saidi Majid was helping to create one of the first Muslim burial grounds in America. This is in Detroit in the 1920s, right? So these men, it wasn't just, oh, it was just a black thing. They were a Muslim thing, but they also knew that they had to target specific things towards black people because of what was happening, right? So when Professor Ezzeldine interacts with these men, now he's got a new perspective. You know what I'm saying? So now he tries to go to Turkey. You know, that wasn't conducive to what he wanted. He goes to Egypt, right? Now, when he comes back to Detroit, and well, back to America, I say, because he came back to Brooklyn. When he comes back, but he initially he moved to Harlem. He was in Harlem initially when he first came back, right? Now, this is another essential point. I said that there were these Muslim communities that was formed by Deuce Muhammad Ali and Saidi Majid. This is true. But once they left, it became a vacuum, right? We don't really know what happened to these communities. You know what I'm saying? What happened to these men? Did they go join other organizations? Did they support other people? Maybe, you know what I'm saying? And I've seen this, right? We can't say this doesn't happen. Sunni Muslims who support non-Muslim organizations because they feel like the non-Muslim organizations are doing work and they're doing something. Okay? They hold their nose and they join and work with them. But we don't act like this hasn't happened before. Because I've heard someone say, well, why would a Muslim work with an organization that they know isn't Muslim orientation? They're not teaching the whole correctest form of Islam. I said, because at the end of the day, we're still black people, and many black people would rather deal with I'm looking for a good word here. Help me out.
Good word is
the non-conforming Islam.
Good word is the word you really want to say that you're trying to avoid. This is the Black Imams Roundtable. Make it plain, black man. Talk back to me.
Right, but they would rather work with these types of groups, right, and to try to form a united front.
You said these type of groups, but you never defined what these type of groups were.
Yeah, objection.
Y'all hard, man.
Hey, there's a benefit of having this platform. We black. We started off on the black imams.
These groups that do not practice Orthodox Islam. Can I say
what does that mean?
What is Orthodox? My English ain't that good.
Y'all cold piece, man. Y'all cold piece, bro. Y'all cold piece, man. Y'all cold piece. But you know, our people, man. Our people work.
No.
Come
Not
on.
so fast. Please pay the toll. Do not go past easy pass. Pay the toll.
Okay. So.
All right, listen.
Yeah.
Ishara Ibara. In an indication is a clear expression. Give us some kind of indication here.
Well, they're not firm on the finality of the prophethood of the Prophet Sallallahu.
Gotcha.
We'll take that.
So
now, hey, but before you go to your point, don't forget your point. I just want to, because I don't think it was mentioned, or at least it wasn't mentioned explicitly. During this 1920s period, were any masjids established by these individuals or groups that you just mentioned?
So that's the thing, right? So when Professor Ezzeldine, as Lomax Bey, attempted to form a masjid in Detroit, the government informed Mr. Drew Ali's people what he was trying to do, right? So, and they knew that was going to create contention, right? So before he could even start the community in terms of actually having an established physical masjid in Detroit, there was, in 1929, in the end of February, beginning of March, I mean, it was on. I mean, like literally, shootouts, the whole nine, right? Because it was money involved. and it was ego involved, right? Here he is telling them, like, listen, man, y'all doing this all wrong. Y'all need to follow me because I got the truth. I ain't want to hear that. Dude just saying he's the prophet. He don't want to hear you telling, no, bro, you're not the prophet. You know what I'm saying? Let me teach you the right way. They weren't trying to hear that, man.
So let me ask you a question. I want to go back because I don't know if that was today or last week. I was hearing another black imam. May Allah help him. I told you say you don't know Amir Sundiata from Lighthouse Mosque in Oakland. So
I don't think I do. I don't think so. But I'm familiar with Lighthouse Mosque
because Oakland has a rich history too.
Yeah,
and you need to eventually put that in your. And his family comes from. He's in Oakland. He's the imam there at the Lighthouse, and he's into this stuff. So he likes to have these conversations. So I don't know if it was this week or last week. Facebook sometimes mess it up. He gave the Juma speech about these issues. One of the things he mentioned, he was talking about Lomax Bay, right? And he gave an analogy that if I told you that there was a man who claimed to be a leader and a prophet or whatever, and one of his followers found out some shady business going on with the women, and he left him. He said, automatically what come in your mind would be the Nation and Malcolm X. He said, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about Lomax Bay and Noble Drew Ali. That's what he mentioned, right?
Right.
So he was indicating that was the cause of the separation.
No.
Can you verify that?
No. None of the things that in terms of the interaction with Lomax Bay was that the problem. That might have been an extension of the problem with him and Claude Green. Back in Chicago, it was, that type of a thing. But that really wasn't the thing with Lomax Bay. What's
his name? What's his name?
Claude Green. He was the business manager for Mr. Drew Ali's organization.
So he had this issue. There was some issue with the women. With this history.
No, it wasn't no issue like that. No, it was he just had took a second wife. It wasn't no issue like.
So in the Moorish Science Temple, they had this concept that more than one wife.
Well, the prophet.
Hey, we straight prosecute.
The guy who called himself a prophet.
Round table. You're not just going to sweep over history. We ain't going.
Okay, I'm keeping it real. The man who called himself a prophet did. Now everybody else, I don't know if they could.
Oh, so he made some special laws for his own.
The only thing I'm saying is he
did. hey, why I'm saying that?
Right. But
because
let me be clear.
I never knew that.
Right. But let me be clear.
Thought it was just stuff.
That was not the issue with Lomax Bay. That was not any of that ever came up in their disagreements.
So his issue was what with
they wasn't following Islam correctly.
Is that like a way we can confirm that?
Or yes, he wrote from the more simple side, right? They have the letters that Mr. Drew Ali wrote to his followers saying, hey, this guy has come out against me, being influenced by people there.
This happened in Turkey.
Pardon me?
You mean in Turkey? You mean there?
No, before he went to Turkey. While he was in Detroit.
You said people there. Who's there?
In Detroit. You got to remember.
Oh, because he was in Chicago.
Gotcha.
Right. Drew Ali, Mr. Drew Ali, he was still in Chicago. Lomax Bay or Professor Ezzeldine was sent to Detroit.
So when he said people there, he was referring to people like Duce Muhammad
and Saadi Majid in Detroit.
So you would say that, and I'm using these terms so no one is confused.
Right.
Like I want to have history, as it is,
Right.
not how we want it to be.
Right.
Right. So I'm going to say Noble Drew Ali for that purpose. So we ain't like, who's Mr. Drew Ali? The guy they call Noble Drew Ali. No, I'm serious.
Right.
Because
Right.
I'm
No, I
telling
get
you,
it.
somebody will misunderstand just because of that.
Right.
And we talked about that. So
Right.
because when we say Mr. Drew Ali, that's from our conviction stance, and we're not, but for information, that's going to be confusion.
Okay.
Right.
Got you.
So even when we get to other names,
Right.
for the purpose of just making sure we're clear,
Right.
right, where we know exactly what we're talking about,
Right.
and then we can make our exceptions and qualifications for our
Got you.
belief. You know,
Okay.
they say,
Okay. Oh, it's cool.
listen, I'm gonna give you a rule. You ready?
Yeah.
Hikayatul kufr, laysa kufra, right?
Right.
Hikayatul kufr, laysa kufr. If you quoting something
Right.
as disbelief,
If you
that
say
quoting
right.
exempts you from the judgment.
Got you.
So if I'm just quoting, like this is what they said,
Right.
right?
Right.
And so it helps you. I'm just, because
Got
I don't want
I
to
understood.
get confused.
Understood.
Right? So his thing was the actual doctrine of
Yes.
Noble Drew Ali.
Right.
And that is documented by him himself.
No.
Noble
It's
Drew Ali
documented by the Noble Drew Ali themselves, because their letters, his letters to his followers
in Detroit
and
from
in
Chicago.
Because Drew Ali, Noble Drew Ali, he sent this letter to his followers that were in Chicago and in Pittsburgh, because he was, trying to rally the troops. Like, hey, this dude is coming out against me. He's coming out against me, and he's not sending me any more money. Like, this is all in the letter. He wrote it. This is not
the money.
So
stop sending the money was because of the doctrine, not before some other stuff.
No, right, because of the doctrine.
Now, my question would become, so that means there was something he was learning in Detroit.
Right.
I guess that's from Dusay Muhammad Ali.
Right.
That told him that this is not Islam.
Exactly.
Now, this is a question I never know.
Because
was the Moorish Science Temple claiming to be Orthodox, or they didn't make no distinction? They just said this is Islam.
They just said this is Islam, right? And Noble Drew Ali got his authorization from Morocco, right, and Egypt to teach Islam.
So let me ask you a question. I mean, this is just so.
That's what they're saying.
No,
yeah.
That's what I'm saying. So the Noble Drew Ali actually was aware of Dusay Muhammad and Sati Majid.
Of course.
And what they taught.
Of course.
So he was like aware of the
Noble Drew Ali he actually went and visited Marcus Garvey when he was in prison. All of these guys were aware of each other.
Right. But see,
that's why
when history's
No, I was about to say that's why Sati Majid went to Egypt to get the fatwa. Because the way it was put out to the people is that Drew Ali had gotten this information that he was giving the black people here, that they were Moorish in descent and not Negro and not black, because he himself had gotten the knowledge from Morocco. He himself had visited Egypt. So Sati Majid was like, okay, they're saying all of these things. I'm about to go back to Egypt and get the fatwa to show that that isn't true. Because you can go back and forth with a person if they're saying, well, how you know? Well, how you know? You know what I'm saying? Okay, he said he's going to go back. When he gets the fatwa, American government doesn't let him back in the country.
So here's my point with that, because this is interesting in terms of sometimes we think, because I learned something today, we ain't there yet. I learned something last night that I didn't even know. Very interesting. That oftentimes when we talk about these things, we don't think of conspiracies to slow down our movements.
Right.
We just be talking about things like in a vacuum.
Right.
And actually, a lot of this stuff had a lot of influences, because at the end of the day, and this goes back to why we're talking about Black, a lot of this was to stop Black movement,
Absolutely.
period, whether it was through Islam or anything else.
Absolutely.
Right? So if Islam was going to be a way to empower Black people, we have to slow that down.
Facts.
You follow my point? So I'm
No,
like,
absolutely.
So because we would have never know all these people, these leaders, they actually had access to the Middle East, to Egypt, to Turkey,
Right.
to Sudan, so this is a lot of stuff. And simultaneously, while all this is going on, you got the fall of the Ottoman Empire.
Yep.
You got the rise of the Saudi kingdom coming.
Yes.
The Saud family mixing with the British. You got a lot of stuff going on. And where we don't look at the world, we stuck in our own little environment. The world is affecting our environment.
Absolutely.
That's why I'm bringing that out.
And that was one of the things, El-Hajj Malik, rahimahullah, one of the things that he addressed, right, is to make it be known to the wider world body that our plight was not just a local American plight, but it was an international plight. That's why he wanted to take it to the United Nations and so forth. But that's getting ahead of the situation. So Assalamu
alaikum. I just received an indication from the Ministry of Interior. We don't have much long. We have to resume later.
Okay, well, let me finish this one point then, right? Regarding Professor Ezzeldin, right? So when he returns in 1936, those communities that had originally been started by Sadi Majid and Deuce Muhammad Ali, they were no longer stable. They were no longer intact, right? So what he did was he started going around to the various communities that were still existed amongst the Moorish Science Temple, amongst the Lahoris and Qadianis, right? And convincing the people to accept Islam. And one particular incident in Pittsburgh, right? When they booted the Lahori leader out of the masjid, out of the temple, they said, "No, we're no longer following you." He took them to court and said, "No, you're gonna follow me." You know what I'm saying? They said, "No, we're booting you out, and we want all of the stuff that we contributed to the organization." So he took them to court, and then when he took them to court, they actually won in court, and they became one of the not temples. I forget the terminology that they use for the Dino Lahi units. They became one of the units for the Dino Lahi, the whole group, almost 200 some people. They all went over and started following Professor Ezzeldin. You see what I'm saying? So he went back to the people and started teaching them normative Islam. Now, was it a particular madhab that he had? We don't know.
But here, I mean, like, this got to be part 2, 3, 4. We got a lot of stuff to uncover.
Right.
All right, we got you out there. You're no longer duck and wreck. We finally got you to answer the subpoena. We're happy. We're proud of you. I hope we did a fair prosecution.
Nah, y'all killing me.
But here's my thing. So we're gonna have to put a plug in this Imam Imam Genius, because
Imam Amin, I was just telling Imam Naeem, I was just telling Imam Amin about once Professor Ezzeldin came back, how he went around and he started giving
I heard you.
to Islam to all of the non-conforming groups, right? And that one particular group in uh,
Pittsburgh.
in Pittsburgh that had been following the Lahori, they kicked him out, and then he took them to court, and then they won. Not only won, they got all of the stuff that they had contributed to the organization, and then they became one of the units of Adin Allahi.
Now, a question: were they black folk who did that?
Yes,
There was black folk.
Yeah, and then they took the identity of Hamitic Arab, right? They moved to, and again, when Professor Ezzedine drew up the doctrine, the incorporation, I should say, for Adin Allahi, he did it in Camden in 1938, and once he did that, he made it clear from the very beginning it was to be a national organization designed to reach out to, and in his words, find Hamitic Arabs wherever they may be.
Hey, man, can we get another half hour?
Let me. All right, go ahead. Y'all talk while let me go seek permission. I have to, ask the Ministry of Interior if we can.
I like that term, Ministry of Interior. I like that.
And you know exactly what I'm talking about, right?
I know.
Never said anything. I just gave an ishara, and you got a clear ibara.
Yes. Right? I like that term.
I'm teaching you how to do this.
Yes. The Ministry of
Beseech
Interior.
the minister on our behalf.
I will do. I'll be right back.
Yep. Go ahead, ma'am.
So I just because you mentioned all of that for a reason, because the point that I wanted to start you with, you said, no, we have to go back. And I just want to make sure that your point was made and delivered. All of this that we're talking about that you mentioned were efforts of Sunni Muslim leaders and workers and imams in America. Working with black folks prior to the Nation of Islam.
Right.
Is that the point you wanted to emphasize?
Yes.
Okay. Because a lot of people tell a story. It's just like, few immigrants there, Nation of Islam, then Sunni Islam.
Right. Or that nobody else came to us ever.
Right.
That's the other one. Right.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that your intention was achieved, that your point was made.
Right.
For the hold on one second. For the extension of this class, we need an executive order from the president. You're gonna need an executive order. Oh, you guys are too much. Nah, permission's granted. Go ahead.
Allah Akbar. It's on. So
No. Permission was granted for 30 minutes.
30 minutes.
All right, go ahead.
30 sa'a.
Nisfu sa'a. Nisfu sa'a. Fuck up.
Go ahead, Imam Naeem.
Okay. I want to read from page 20 of this book that I mentioned earlier, right?
Yep.
You read this book before, right?
Of course.
Okay.
Not me. I'm sorry. I've never even seen the book. See, listen, I know how to say I don't know. I never even seen the book.
The author compiled a bunch of articles talking about the growth of Islam in America. This is not a new book. It's an old book. It's published in 1991. She says right here, Darul Islam. So I'm reading this. I want you to correct, comment, or, if anything is wrong that she mentions here, I need you to correct it for us.
Okay.
Darul Islam has been the main and largest indigenous Sunni organization in America, gaining membership rapidly during the 60s. In doctrine, it was a typical mainstream movement, though in organization it was a novelty. The name was derived from the classical Muslim division of the world into the realm of Islam, Darul Islam, and the realm of war, Darul Harb. Imam Yahya Abdul Karim was accepted as Amirul Mu'mineen, leader of the faithful. Ministries of defense, finance, education, external affairs, social services, mosques, and so forth were established to provide services for the community. Darul Islam soon became a national organization with some 20 mosques in the New York area alone, and even crossed the border to Canada. Like many black movements of the 60s, Darul Islam was a militant movement with occasional outbreaks of violence. That's part of the quote that I wanted to read. And I want you to interject
Well,
there.
I definitely wouldn't. First of all, I wouldn't categorize the Jamaat as a militant organization. Although, listen, let's be clear, right? You cannot form anything in inner city without having taken precautions for security. It's just a reality. You know what I'm saying? But to characterize the Jamaat as militant, no, no, it wasn't a militant organization. You know what I'm saying? It was the brothers. It was organized along ministries and stuff like that, no doubt. But it was national, and then each of the masajids were independent in a way that they had their own ministries and everything. You know, so it was thought up and organized in that manner.
So the title.
And all of them had bayah to the imamate, which was represented by Imam Yahya,
So
right?
was that title Amirul Mu'mineen really used? I never heard that.
I never heard them use the title Mir Mu'mineen like that. No,
I'm just saying, just the title itself.
I never heard
So
that title.
was his title like Imam Yahya Abdul Karim
Right.
Amirul Mu'mineen?
No,
Someone said that?
no.
No,
But
I
he
just
was
never heard
the
that.
national Amir, though. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
But
but
it was not.
National Amir
It's
don't
not
mean
Amir
Amirul
Mu'mineen.
Mu'mineen.
Right. That's
I mean,
a big stretch, you know.
that's what I mean, because
Yeah.
that
So
has a bunch
I
of
haven't never heard of
connotations.
that, and so yeah, I haven't heard of that.
Here's why I said it has a bunch of other connotations. Because
See, that's why I wanted you to, because this stuff is published and people
Right.
take this stuff as law. That's why I said I want you to pick it apart.
Right.
you know,
No,
because
so
when you say that Amirul Mu'mineen, and then you add the word militant, then you tie it. This is the devil. You tie it and you make it a kind of subversive organization
right.
trying to overthrow the American government.
Oh, of course.
It has all those
Hey,
connotations.
listen. They have
People are deep. Gotta
stuff
watch
on
them.
me
Yeah.
on the internet, right? Saying that I'm a militant, right? You know, no, I'm gonna send it
And
to.
we know that's not true, right?
Hey, I'm gonna send it to you, Imam. They said I'm a militant. You know what I'm saying? But guess what? Some of our own people will read that and be like, "Yeah, I always thought there was something wrong with him."
Yep.
Right? Because the
That's how
minute
we
they
get
say
down.
anything they want about anybody and our people, we won't investigate it because they said it. It's
Okay,
gotta be true.
as an official disclaimer from the Black Imams Roundtable, we disavow any acts of militancy.
Hey, listen. Oh, you know what? You know what?
As I know him as a good historian, if he's doing some other subversive activities, the Black Imams Roundtable is clear of it.
Hey, Imam, I'm gonna make a disclaimer on myself. The views and opinions of Akil Fad
Allahu Akbar.
are not expressly nor unintentionally assigned to any organization that he may be connected to.
Allahu Akbar.
But
So
they
my
will do
next
that though, bro. They will
yeah.
do it.
So my next question, I want you to give us the origins of the Dar Islam movement. Like, where did they
Alhamdulillah,
come
man.
from?
So
Man, you skip like
but we
40
can't,
years of
dog,
history.
we just can't go to the Dar and skip all of the development of the. But I'm gonna tell you something. I'm gonna tell you a name because in the sake of, because I wanted to mention him tonight, and because he's not often mentioned, right? And I think this brother is a very pivotal brother in the United States, but because he was so behind the scenes, he's not mentioned much, right? His name was Salahuddin Shakur, right? Salahuddin Shakur Rahimullah, right? He was the father of Lumumba and Zayd Shakur, right? What makes him so pivotal is that he was a member of Adin-Allahi, Universal Arabic Association, where he worked with Sheikh Hisham Jabber, who buried Malcolm, El Haj Malik, Rahimullah. He also was a member of the the OAAU, which was the organization El Haj Malik founded, and he was a member of the Muslim Mosque Inc. Right? He came from that tradition. So, and then he had two sons who were shuhada. Zayd was his son, Zayd Shakur, and Lumumba Shakur, right? And he taught brothers like Matulu Shakur, Sekou Odinga, Daruba bin Wahab, right? Bilal Sunni Ali, all of these brothers who were revolutionaries. They came through him, his tutelage, right? But he was deeply Orthodox Sunni Muslim.
This was out in Oakland, right?
No, this was in New Jersey, Philadelphia.
Didn't they end up in Oakland, some of them?
No, so you had,
I don't mean to extend it, but
so
when I was in Oakland, they were talking about this.
Black Panther Party, right? The Black Panther Party had what was developed out in Oakland, right, was like the West Coast wing, but then you had the East Coast wing, which was more nationalist and cultural in orientation. So many of them became Muslim. They adopted Muslim names, and they related to the land. So many of them joined the Republic of New Africa. Whereas the brothers that were more on the West Coast with Dr. Huey Newton, because a lot of people don't want to give him his credit. He was a doctor. He got his PhD. But Dr. Newton, when they formed the Black Panther Party out there, they were more of this internationalist socialist construct, right? So, but I don't really get into much of that history. I kind of stick with like more so the East Coast because many of them became Muslim, even the ones who, right, who were part of the RAM, right, with Dr. Ahmad, right, Ahmad Muhammad, right. Many of those brothers, all of them came from that revolutionary fervor and spirit, but they all became Muslim.
And some people indicated in the comments, but just can you make it more explicit? Can you draw the line between Salahuddin Shakur and Zayd, Sada Shakur, Tupac Shakur? Can you make all the connections for people that don't know?
Yes. Okay. So Abu Shakur, this a father. This is who Salahuddin Shakur was. He was the one who basically was the head of the Shakur tribe. Lumumba Shakur was his son, right? Lumumba Shakur was his son. He married one of the members of the Adin-Allahi, who was also a prominent person within the UNIA daughter. I don't know if you know, I've ever heard of Sister uh, Miriam Samad. She was very well known in New York in the cultural society, but she was Muslim, right? And her husband was part of the UNIA, right? But he was also part of Adino Lahi as a Muslim. When their daughter married Lumumba, right? That when they married Lumumba, he also took um, Athena Shakur as his second wife. But all of them together was the Shakur tribe. Matulu Shakur, he was part of that. Zayd, uh, many other brothers who were part of the Revolutionary Underground, right? Who they also was part of that. But the remnants of the Black Panther Party from the East Coast, they all followed him because he was an internationalist. He traveled overseas. He started businesses. He got them to have an entrepreneurial spirit, but also to still have a revolutionary zeal. See, a lot of times what people try to write out the fact is that El Haj Malik Shabazz was a revolutionary. He was a revolutionary. He wasn't a civil rights worker. He wasn't a civil rights activist. That wasn't what he was. That's not what, when he went overseas, that Jamal Nasser and all of those other brothers who are leaders, they looked at him as, they didn't look at him as a civil rights activist. They looked at him as a peer amongst them, as a fighter. As a matter of fact, he wanted to name his organization, the OAAU, he wanted to name it the African American Freedom Fighters. But brothers like Dr. Clark and all of them was telling him, no, don't name it that, because you're going to bring more pressure on yourself. So he let them organize that, and they came up with the name, the OAAU. But
so let me ask you something. Did his connections to Egypt relate from Malcolm's Al-Hajj Malik Shabazz travels, or he had his independent connection?
he traveled overseas himself. He traveled to like West Africa, and he did trade, right?
Was this post Malcolm or
Post.
post
Post.
Malcolm?
Post. Post. So,
So who did Zayd marry?
I don't know who his wife was.
Okay.
Right. I don't know who his wife was. But I do know that because when Lumumba Shakur married Miriam Samad's daughter, that was a big thing within the revolutionary community, you know what I'm saying, because of their connections, of her family ties, you know what I'm saying, as well as his father's family ties, you know what I'm saying. So they were always well aware of the lineage of revolutionary spirit that they had. And so they carried that on into whatever else they were doing for the people. That's why if you listen to people that came out the Black Panther Party that was from the East Coast, their language is entirely different, and how they relate to the Republic of New Africa is entirely different than the ones who came out of Oakland. It's entirely different because their perspectives were different. You know, if the Black Panther Party was not a monolith, as many people think it was, right? It was, and then of course, again, not to belabor the point, another instance of infiltrators getting in and splitting up things and creating greater divisions, right? That was another situation, and that's a whole nother thread unto itself. So not to get into that, but I just want to say that Abba Shakur, Salahuddin Shakur, this man was extremely pivotal because he kept that same fervor that kind of influenced many brothers in the Deen and outside of the Deen on the East Coast. You know, and so, but he himself was Muslim and tied to the organizations of Al-Haj Malik Shabazz, also tied to the Adino Lahi Universal Arabic Association of Professor Ezzeldin and with oh man, Sheikh Hisham Jabber, Rahmatullah.
Okay, so we're gonna put a pin in it right there.
Right here. All right.
In order that I'm able to sleep.
Right. I got you. I got you.
So we're gonna have to schedule this part 1. It's part 2 of our series, but part 1 of our dialogue with you. And what we hope to do, if I can get a permission from the Minister Interior and Dr. Rasul can get permission just to even talk to us again from his Minister Interior. Then we can all come
man,
together.
I want to be clear, man. I love Brother Rasul, Dr. Rasul, man. That's my guy. One time he and I went over this brother house. This is no joke. We was over to the brother house. The brother went to sleep. We were still talking. He went to sleep and woke back up. We were still talking, man.
Yeah, I mean, these sessions, as yesterday I had a talk with Imam Mutawif.
The man.
We went hours, and so that's why I'm like,
listen,
it ain't just this. I've been going day after day after day. Hours.
Hey, listen.
This stuff is interesting and important.
You do realize I got to call and check in tomorrow, right?
He's listening.
Yeah. So anything I mess up on,
he's gonna say,
I got to answer, huh?
Talk to him. He gonna say, yeah, I love Akil, but that cat got to get his facts together.
No. Here we go. Thing like, now you gotta come see me. That's how that go.
I didn't even know the minister was going to cut it short tonight. I didn't even get to what I had in my notes.
Hey, listen, Imam Naeem, you done been in the office in Cleveland.
Yeah. So no, we'll pick it up. We'll get another. We'll make another date. We'll put it out early so people can attend. And I mean, we have a lot of stuff to flush out.
Right.
So I would imagine that they're going to need, at minimum, at least 5 sessions.
Okay.
Minimum, just to really get it all out and get it, and then deep. So set up for, this is session number 1. Let's set up for 5 sessions so we can plan them out and we can get our time, because this is important.
No doubt.
Extremely important. And there's no big I's and little U's in our work. You know what I mean? In our work and our building for our people, there's no big I's and little U's. We should learn that big I's and a bunch of little U's don't help us.
No doubt.
Because you've mentioned on multiple occasions in different scenarios where when big I's are wiped out, the us go away too.
Mm-hmm.
So we gotta use all our resources, work together, and everybody do what they do, and we bring that together to benefit our people. And that is a mission of the Black Imams Roundtable. Like, we got to help each other, right? And we have to see ourselves. I don't know what happened.
It kind of faded out for me.
Don't worry, you might fade out perfectly. But don't worry, we'll continue to work. Nah.
Alhamdulillah.
But no, seriously, this is important work.
No doubt.
We got to do this on live and also on the ground.
Oh, no doubt.
We got to get on the ground and we got to mix with our people and all around the country and really.
I want to leave this one point too before I let us go. Do
you got extra room in your house, bro?
No, this is real quick. Right? I wanted to leave the point.
No. You didn't answer the question. You're going to stop that. Do you have an extra room in your house?
No, I asked y'all that earlier on the phone. Don't try to twist it on me. I asked y'all.
Okay, go ahead.
No, so I wanted to just say, I wanted to mention Sheikh Deuce Muhammad Ali, Sheikh Sati Majid, right, and Professor Ezzeddin and Abu Shakur, those 4 men. You know what I'm saying? I wanted to just, and I got a chance to do that, alhamdulillah. But the other thing I wanted to say is that one of the things that has been a thread in our people ever developing is creating a sense of movement amongst the youth, right? And that we still have to do. How it's going to get done, I don't know. But I know in order for us to continue to grow, we have to create a sense of movement amongst the youth and have a documented way of educating our people that can be passed on to generation to generation. That's it.
I agree. I agree. All right, Imam Genius, inshallah, you close us out with your final comments and dua, inshallah.
Inshallah.
Akil, we really thank you. Tremendous, tremendous information. May Allah reward you. May Allah bless you and your family and your work.
Ameen.
May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make you a benefit for the nation of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in general and for our people in specific. You did a great job tonight, mashallah. And all of us learned a lot. You know what I mean? And, we really appreciate you. And you always have yourself a home with the Black Imams Roundtable. We love you. And inshallah, you will always be in our dua. And we look forward to our future discussions and actually on the ground work, grassroots.
Oh, no doubt.
Inshallah.
Inshallah.
Can we tentatively get you for a week from now?
Yes.
Imam Otis, do we got to move the time up so that you don't have no problem with the Minister of Interior?
Bro, I can't answer that at this moment. Well, this Black movement, African Muslim movement is really pushing it.
Subhanallah. The minister just informed us. I don't know how I forget this, but next week is a summit. A week from now.
Okay.
Yeah. So the summit, next week. See,
trying to get me in, trying to double book me.
Oh yeah.
So the
summit. So let me put that up real quick while we at it. Just real quick. Somebody gonna get blocked, but just 5 seconds.
Where's the man Fahim?
He duck wreck. So we got this coming next weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, the 18th through the 20th in Atlantic City, New Jersey, the 4th African American Islamic Summit, which is a covenant of hearts and uniting our people. This type of discussions and many more will be, where's the thing? I'm sorry, 1 second.
Yeah, that's the first flyer.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna put up the link for the. Okay, all right, there you go. The tickets can be purchased at this link. Inshallah, it is a 3-day event. Those speakers and many people will be coming. You'll be meeting a lot of our people. Inshallah ta'ala, we're working, inshallah, and we hope that all of you who are available can join us. Oh yeah, that was okay. Yeah, so inshallah, so go to our site, get more information, inshallah, and let's come together and make this thing work, inshallah. Barakallahu bikum. Great, man.
May Allah reward you, Akil, for joining us. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. As you can see from the comments.
Oh, I haven't seen any comments.
Oh, that's right. Right. You're on your mobile device.
Yeah.
When you go back and look at the comments, I think you'll get the vibe that I got, that our family benefited a lot from the information that you shared, and a lot of us were educated and informed about things and connections that they didn't know prior to today, including myself. You know, so may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you. May Allah bless.
See, and that's just one of the dangers of, you know, when we allow the knowledge or our history to be, you know, placed in the frameworks of only academia, because they have to cookie cut things in accordance to their disciplines, right?
Right.
So, but their disciplines is not necessarily how our lives intersect. So our large pieces of information get dropped to the wayside because they have to be, you know, within those disciplines. And that, I mean, it is what it is, you know?
Right. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless all of you who joined us tonight in the comments. And your comments and your input was definitely appreciated. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward all of you. May
Ameen.
Allah increase us all in knowledge. May
Ameen.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increase us in sincerity towards him. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us with qurba, nearness to him. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
السلام عليكم.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.